UFC 287 is right around the corner, man. Coming at you live from Miami, Florida, the 305. Some big fights on this UFC pay-per-view card. Maybe none other than Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, the Miami, Florida native himself. I have recruited some of my favorite people in the entire MMA space to come on here, give their thoughts, give their opinions, give their breakdowns, and more importantly, leave their predictions for this big matchup between Burns and Masvidal. All right, so let's check in with them and see what they're thinking on this huge matchup.
Prediction for UFC 287 co-main event between Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal this Saturday night. I think Gilbert Burns is going to win via unanimous decision. I think he'll use his takedown offense, submission abilities to constantly threaten submissions, keep George on the ground. I do not think Jorge's takedown defense is going to be able to hold up good enough against Durinho, and I think Burns is going to be on a 2-fight winning streak.
What's up, Cajun crew? My official prediction for Gilbert Burns or Masvidal is I got Gilbert Burns by pretty much whatever way he wants. I don't even think it's going to be a close fight necessarily. I think Gilbert Burns can kind of do what he wants. Masvidal has better striking, but not by much. I think Gilbert Burns has more power, and I think Gilbert Burns can way out wrestle, way out grapple Masvidal for sure. So it's going to take like a big shot for Masvidal to even have a shot. I mean, everybody has a puncher's chance, but I got Gilbert Burns by second round sub, I think, but I actually think you're going to be surprised on the feet. Gilbert Burns is going to hurt him a couple times first.
If I'm thinking with my head, I'm going Gilbert Burns. If I'm thinking with my wallet, I'm going Masvidal. I don't think that Gilbert Burns is the wrestler that Usman or Colby is. So Masvidal has faced guys like that before. Masvidal also did fight Meni Mayer in his prime and didn't get submitted. I think the other issue is that Gilbert Burns has a tendency to get a little emotional. We saw it in the Hamzat fight. So if he wants to try to stand and bang, Masvidal can kind of take advantage of that. So Masvidal at plus 650 right now on DraftKings for the knockout is a really good buy. But if we're taking money off the table completely, I do have to think that Gilbert Burns probably gets it done either by a late submission or decision.
What's up, guys? I'm McCorry, and this is my thoughts on Gilbert Burns for Jorge Masvidal. So I think this is a great test for Jorge Masvidal. Does he still belong with the elite of the division? You know, we've seen him lose 3 straight now to 2 of the best in the division, so maybe not the worst loss to take and against tough matchups. But Gilbert Burns, like Covington and like Kamaru Usman, can wrestle, can control, and like Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns can knock people out. And we've seen it time and time again. And, you know, Gilbert Burns coming off a very impressive win over Neil Magny. I'm very interested to see if he comes in with the grappling approach, you know, control, look for a finish on the ground like he did against Wonderboy and Magny. Or will he try and stand with Chimaev like he did against Chimaev? I don't think he will, but it's a matter of can Jorge Masvidal stop the takedowns, and is he as quick as maybe he once was? Because I do think he has regressed just a little bit. If Gilbert wins, it will be by decision, and if Jorge Masvidal wins, it will be via TKO. I can't make a prediction in this fight. It's just too close to call for me. But I think the logical pick would be Gilbert Burns.
Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns is going to be one of those bangers from UFC 287. And I mean, there's so many exciting factors here. First and foremost, I truly believe that if either one of these guys get a dominant finish, they're leaping Colby. And everybody agrees with me. Nobody can disagree, except for Dana White. But that's besides the topic. So that's the biggest factor. And also, they're in the 305, baby. They're in the 305. That's where Masvidal was bred and born and raised and became who he is from there. So I believe that's going to add so much to his confidence and also a pressure. I believe Masvidal just always passes the pressure test by flying colors. But this time, he's 38. He's coming off a few losses. And I just think he's fighting a guy in Gilbert Burns who just reached another gear since losing to Usman a few years ago for the belt. So I'm taking Gilbert Burns, but this is going to be one of them fights. We're all going to be on our feet, and we're not going to want to miss a second because it could be finished at any second.
Hello, Mrs. MMA Casual here to give my brief breakdown of Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns, a fight that I'm extremely excited for, the co-main event of UFC 287. I do think that people are writing off Jorge Masvidal a bit more than they should. He's got incredible takedown defense. Gilbert, you know, I would give him the edge on the wrestling and grappling, especially the grappling aspect. He is a submission artist, despite being able to find his hands in the last few fights and even knock down the former champion Usman. I do think that Jorge shouldn't be such an underdog in this fight, but I do expect Gilbert to win. I think he's going to kind of use that bully style against him, the same way that he used against, or the same style that he used against Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, and was so successful in. So I expect to see a lot of grappling, a lot of pushing Jorge up against the fence, trying to neutralize those power shots of his. But I do think that if this fight stays on the feet and Gilbert is confident enough to do so, that it is a bit of a risk for him. And Masvidal, he's got incredibly technical boxing, so I think that he can find that finish in Gilbert. This is a 3-round fight, so I think that does kind of favor both of these guys, especially Masvidal, considering he's only been fighting in 5-round fights as of late. So I'm excited to see this one. I think it's going to be more competitive than people think, but I am siding with Gilbert Burns. Jorge has a great takedown defense, so I don't think that he is going to get necessarily dominated on the ground, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I don't expect to see a submission, despite Gilbert being a submission artist, because Jorge is so defensively sound on the ground. But I'm going to go with Gilbert to win this one. Well wishes to Jorge, the king of Miami, as they touch back down in Miami this weekend, but we're siding with Gilbert.